Right. Thank you, everybody. So as Phil alludes to, what we're going to talk about in the next session is how we can optimize the customer journey for profitable growth. As a business, we've been around for many, many years, and we've talked about customer journeys for a long, long time. How to activate personalized customer journeys has been front and center for a long, long time. But first, I think we need to set a bit of a scene, and why is the customer journey so important? Um, the three key pillars that us as a business see in the next 12 months are going to be businesses wanting to drive profit, not revenue, how to drive efficiency in their email marketing and day-to-day marketing, and how they can start to really bring personalization to life using zero-party data. So there's lots and lots of stories. I talked to lots and lots of brands. And historically, those individuals and those marketing managers have been tasked or targeted on revenue growth, but not profit. Now, what we're seeing in the market with the brands that we're working with, there's much more of a turn to how can we create a profitable action. So to do that, we as marketeers have to transition and train the teams to move away from purely talking about last click revenue into, okay, what impact has that marketing activity delivered with in terms of lifetime value? Is the first transaction a customer is making with that brand, is it profitable from day one, or do we need second, third, fourth orders to create that profit? And that can be down to multiple factors in terms of margin on particular products. It can be cost of goods sold. It can be marketing spend, so high acquisition costs. So we're seeing a lot more of a focus within brands that we're working with to move to a profit, not revenue approach to performance measurement. Secondly is how do we create more marketing efficiently? I'm going to come on to that in the next couple of slides. And as I've said, how do we start to activate at scale using zero-party data? COVID, I didn't think I'd be still talking about COVID in this 2024. The reason I say this, I think brands historically saw such big revenue growth and low acquisition costs, high growth during those COVID years, that they're still chasing that high that they saw in 2021-ish, 2020 onwards. We describe it as chasing the dragon. There has been a force of nature of, well, we sent 1 million emails, we made £1 million or $1 million. Let's send 2 million because we'll make $2 million. That law of diminishing returns mean it doesn't work that way. And what we're seeing within the inbox and the inbox providers is that more and more brands are getting marked as spam. They're having deliverability issues. We're seeing Google Mail bring in, increased efficiencies in the ways that users can mark emails as spam, and that's causing us problems. Brands want year-on-year growth at a revenue level, but they're not always getting it, so they're chasing more and more volume. The ESPs are trying to restrict the emails being delivered into the inbox, as an agency, we're stuck in the middle. Brands want to send more. Individuals that receive the emails don't want to receive them. Cost of acquisition is high, so we have to make what we're doing work much, much harder. So that's where the customer journey comes into play. As I've just alluded to, customers' expectations are continuing to increase. Now, when I first got involved with email marketing many, many years ago, I can remember an individual, I was working at a tech business, ringing us up to say, how did you know I was on that website? How did you know that I'd left something in my basket? By the time I left that business, if we weren't sending an email that referenced the products, the size, the colorway, total price within those emails, customers weren't buying. And what we're seeing now is that continuation of actually brands are now consumers are now recognizing when a brand is sending a straight system generated Klaviyo abandoned basket. You've left these items in your basket. Come back and buy. Selling soon. Consumers are recognizing that, and brands have to work harder to bring much more personalized, relevant content into those communications. To do this, we have to think customer first, not brand first. So it means a transition and a process change within organizations to really think about putting the customer at the heart and center of their journey versus just sending the marketing and brand messages they want to send and they think their customers will want to receive. We really have to start looking at all those zero-party data capture points that we've got to identify that propensity to purchase. So that might be the fact that a customer's come onto the website, completed a zero-party, shoppable quiz. It may be the fact that they've been on the site multiple times in the last 3 weeks. We know which products they've brought. all of that relevancy then needs to come in and be executed via email and SMS. So brands have to start to think, well, actually, it's less about broadcast. I want to tell the customer about this message, to looking at what the consumers and how they're engaging with the marketing, and starting to tweak and evolve and personalize that messaging truly at a one-to-one level. Now, that's not to be saying for a brand that there will be key messages that they need to broadcast out, but they can be then complemented with personalized, content driven by zero-party data capture within those emails. So you can have a combination of products or brand push that a brand needs to sell. You've got, X number of widgets sat on the shelves in the warehouse that you need to get rid of, but complemented with really hyper personalized content for that individual. And the challenge here is doing that at scale. Look, when we start thinking about a customer journey mapping session with a customer, it's always good to look backwards as well as going forward. So what's worked well in the past that you've stopped doing? Where are the drop-off points as it stands? So we'll be looking at, let's take it, a Shopify client, for example. We'll be looking at the Shopify raw data. We'll be looking within Google Analytics to see, okay, where are people dropping off? Are they dropping off on the homepage? Are they diving deep into a PDP and then leaving there? Are we getting them through to the basket and then they're leaving because there's hidden delivery costs that we haven't been, exposing the consumer to until the basket page? So what are the key drop-off points on the pages? Then we can start thinking about, actually, what can we do about those? So from a consumer perspective, that could be, can we send them an email? Can we send them an SMS? Can we send them in-app notification, for example? How does it then work for retargeting those customers post activity? So do we want to share that data out to other channels based on their interaction for lookalike audiences, for example? So we also want to look at what programs have been implemented in the past, have worked, not worked, and why they haven't. So because something has failed in the past doesn't necessarily mean it's the wrong thing to do. And what we tend to find is brands will test something in isolation, consider it an inconclusive test, and then stop working. Whereas what they should have done is rerun that, or iterate that test and rerun it multiple times over a prolonged period of time. So what we'd be looking to do is, how can we take all of those learnings, complete some analysis, and then bring everybody together in a workshop with the view to start to map out the customer journey. So generally, the best way to do this from our perspective is everyone get into a room, lots of post-it notes and Sharpie markers, understand the potential journeys, document them, start to prioritize which ones are the key work streams, understand what the buying behaviors currently are. So if we've got a brand that is selling like £1,000 suitcases, they're going to have a completely different customer journey and experience to a brand that's selling dog food. So you have to understand and take into consideration the product you're selling, the expected frequency. So I'm not going to be buying a £2,000 suitcases every year. I may do, but I'm not going to be buying them certainly every month like I would do with dog food. We'd also look at the entire customer journey. So taking that offline as well. So start to think about, how does a consumer interact with the brand? So they could receive an email, they could receive an SMS, they may then call the call center or email the help desk. So how does those customer data points get taken into consideration? Because one of the journeys that we need to think about is, if a customer's had a poor experience, we shouldn't be then messaging them with the latest offer. We need to be thinking about, how do we bring that consumer out of that automated journey or next newsletter and into a silo pot to let them have some time away from the brand. We'll be thinking about, okay, all the data capture points on the website. So you've got the footer sign up, you've got that, a pop-up, be that a Klaviyo pop-up or a Shopify pop-up or an embedded other app. We have footer signups, we have the checkout, we have other data capture processes such as an Octane AI quiz, Digio. All of those processes are capturing zero-party data, either at an email address level or preference level data. And as a business, how we use that data is then to drive a much more personalized experience at scale. So we can infer certain pieces of information based on pages viewed, but we don't know about that customer unless we've really asked those questions. I treat the shoppable quizzes almost like a shopkeeper in the store, that someone's helping you define the right purchase for yourself. So let's take a hair care brand that we work with. They're asking what type of curly hair do you have? um, what are the conditions you have? Is it frizzy? Is it straight? Whatever it may be, all of those parameters come through. We're capturing that zero party data. We're sending an email communication off the back of it that's driving significant sales, but we're also able to build that profile and zero party information that allows us to do much more targeted communications later on down the journey, be that within newsletters or SMS campaigns. We then look to create, and what I would always recommend is create an urgency and impact matrix. There can be lots of things that come out of a customer journey workshop, and the trick is to how do you prioritize which you should be doing, which action you should be completing first? How do you balance the expectations of a customer service versus a commercial benefit of sending more activity? How do you balance the brand requirements? And it's about that prioritization between what's going to have the biggest impact on the customer experience or bottom line with the lowest amount of effort, what has other dependencies within the process, i.e., we need third-party involvement from a development perspective. So how do we start prioritizing those actions that are going to have the biggest impact on the consumer? And a quick example how that could look. So I alluded to earlier, all being in a meeting room, lots of post-it notes, starting to plan out those journeys. And that can be down to the fact that we believe we need 5 emails in a add to cart journey, for example, and that then all gets put into this journey. What we might do is on a follow-up is say, well, actually, yes, there needs to be 5 emails, all with zero party data within that add to cart journey. But to start with, as a prioritization, we're going to activate email 1, email 3, and email 5 because the volumes are a little bit lower. And we're going to also then be able to complete some work on another area at the same time. So again, because we've got multiple work streams running, it means that we can prioritize different actions at different times. But this just gives you an example of the sort of activities that we'd be looking at to use within the customer journey from a Klaviyo perspective to drive a better personalized experience for those consumers. Now, what you'll notice within here is there's lots of different pieces. Some are around what I would call the on-site retargeting, so your basket browser, add to cart. Others are around sort of list management and data cleansing, such as Sunset. Others are really about how do we start to take a consumer from an email address to a first order, first to a second, second to a third, etc. And others are around, customer experience and post-purchase. So, how to care for your shoes that you've just bought, or what's the right size for me as an individual. So lots of different things here. The key here is then to start to think about how do you prioritize based on urgency and impact. So urgency can be that there's a commercial risk, i.e. we're leaving money on the table from a sales perspective, or there's a real issue with customer experience that's causing problems. One of the things that we like to do is say, well, actually, what are the key, call center queries, and how can we create an automated journey to answer some of those queries before they get to the call center? So as a channel or as a process, email and SMS can not only drive incremental revenue sales, but also reduce customer queries, which in turn leads to that greater profitability for a brand. We've talked about how the customer journey process and that mapping works. Now, being realistic, there are only so many journeys that you can create within a tool. So you can think about your sales funnel, as I call it, so your browser abandonment, add to cart, basket abandonment. You can think about your welcome journeys, that nurture process of taking a new subscriber into the brand, be that a prospect or a customer, how you nurture to first order, first to second, post-purchase, all of those customer experience points. Now, generally, you can be as broad as you like with those because you can recognize the action, use some fairly generic content, and really just thank that consumer at each of those points, or infer out you've left this item in your basket. The clever bit becomes how you start using that zero-party data captured to really drive some personalized comms. This is just a quick example of some of the powers of using zero-party data coupled with a bit of AI technology to really drive some really unique content. So typical example here of a basket abandonment email. We've saved your basket for you so you can pick up right where you left off. It's lovely, but you can tell it's an automated system generated message. There's nothing personalized about it. If we move through to this particular version, so this is a brand called Sophie Allport, a UK homewares brand. What we're doing with the zero party data, which is collected via the fact that they've left an item in their basket, is really start to change the content and the tone of the email based on the products they've left in their basket. So you can really start to see how that improves the whole customer experience. It's much more relevant to an individual. It's much more tailored, personalized, and actually it's done it at scale. And as I alluded to at the start of this conversation, the biggest challenge for marketeers, certainly in the email space, has always been how do we generate the many, many thousands of unique pieces of content we would need to generate in order to really drive that personalized experience. We can maybe do it at a segment level or a cohort level, but again, it's still very broad and it requires time and effort to generate those content variants. There's pieces of technology out there, and this is using AI to really then look at that zero-party data that's been collected, start to build out some really lovely commentary and bring it back into the email, all in an automated fashion. So just to give you a bit of a steer about how this works in terms of efficiency, because again, one of the big objectives I see for this coming 12 months is how do we drive efficiency in marketing? And that's getting away from sending lots and lots of new extra email campaigns. It's really about making what you've got already in place work a lot harder. So you can see here, if I take the top two lines at the top, we're running a 50-50 split test with this particular brand. This is just looked at a last 7-day period. They're hitting the same same process. So they're hitting the Klaviyo add to cart metric, Shopify add to cart metric. We're taking half the traffic out of that existing program. We're sending it to a webhook and we're pushing the data back in with some personalized email content. And you can start to see how much more efficient add to cart revenue per email sent's gone from just over $1 to $2.21, for example. So you can start to see how it can be less about sending more and additional emails to making what you've got currently live work harder. And part of that, again, a full circle back to that optimization piece is, well, actually, if you've got less than 1,000 emails running in a particular program, even if you optimize that to its fullest extent, you're not going to turn the needle on the revenue as much as you think. So let's take 1,000 emails, 50% open rate, that's 500 opens. We'll have a 10% click-through rate, click to open, so that's 50 clicks. Even if we get a 10% conversion rate, that's still only 5 incremental sales. So actually, it's how do we start getting some broader, zero party for tracking at the top of the funnel, and then make what's currently there work harder, because we could change the color of a button from blue to green and it may look better and maybe better for brand, but it's unlikely that it will drive a significant increase in incremental sales. So this is all about how do we work more efficiently? How do we start really ramping up optimization of existing activity and not just adding incremental work that you're going to have to maintain and manage on an ongoing basis needlessly. Not everyone's going to have access to some cool AI stuff at the moment, but think about from a Klaviyo perspective, if you're using product merges and you're fixing those products into the templates, start thinking about syncing the product catalogs, using dynamic content, using some of Klaviyo's AI functionality that allows you to select relevant products based on whether a customer's purchased, viewed, or might like those products. We also do quite a lot of work with brands around, certainly from a welcome perspective, what are the best products, top selling products for new customers? So how do we then push those products into welcome journeys as recommended products in any series that's going out to a prospect? So start thinking about converting using dynamic content based on event data, any user attributes, so that may be shoe size, hair color, whatever it may be, to really drive some variation within the templates. I will give you one caveat though, is just to watch the file size within the templates. If you make the file size, I think it's bigger than 150 kilobytes, you do run the risk of clipping in Gmail, which then drops off the unsubscribe link from the bottom of the email. So there's a few things just to be mindful of as you're doing this. to make sure you don't cause yourself any other problems further down the line. Just to give you a bit of a steer on where we see email contribution. So this is a lot harder than it used to be, certainly since the advent of a GA4. So brands have moved away from that pure last click model. But typically, we'd expect to see email be 15 to 20% of the brand's total online revenue. That can fluctuate based on time of year. So during peaks, that may go even higher and then drop down off out of peak. But generally, it's a good rule of thumb that if email's contributing 40-50%, we'd argue that the acquisition channels aren't efficient and aren't working hard enough. So again, it's a seesaw and a balance to just bear in mind. When we talk about email volume, if we're sending 100 emails, we'd expect 1 to 5 of those to be an automated email. Automated being your welcomes, your browsers, your baskets, etc. But those emails to be so much more efficient. So they're going to drive 25 to 30% of your overall email revenue. So you can suddenly get a steer very quickly within your customer journey. So, well, actually, email automated emails are 1% of our send volumes, but they're 50% of our email revenue. Actually, there's probably something inefficient within our campaign emails that's causing us challenges. So again, it's about taking that wider piece to say something's not quite right with our customer experience, i.e., we're probably sending too many emails. Actually, what would be the impact of us pulling back from sending at such a high cadence, and does that have a positive or negative impact on the customer journey? A few quick takeaways just to finish the slides, really. So Klaviyo by default, for whatever reason, like to put UTM medium equals Klaviyo. Nobody really cares what the medium, the medium, but what ESP that you're using, but actually we want to know the channel. So we would always change UTM medium to be email. UTM source will be email underscore campaign or email underscore automation, depending on whether it's a campaign or a flow message. And then obviously make sure you're activating the campaign tracking, because that's not activated by default. Switch on UTM tracking across everything if it's not already done. And actually at a flow level, you need to do that at an individual flow level basis. So click into each email, make sure they're UTM tracked. Klaviyo have a bit of a challenge at the moment that you can't have a centralized view of SMS for UTM tracking, but what you can do is override the UTM tracking in each individual SMS, in which case we follow a very similar process. So UTM medium equals SMS, UTM source is SMS underscore campaign or SMS underscore flow. Email engagement, just coming on to better deliverability as we go into peak. We use what we call email engagement segments, fairly straightforward. Customer has engaged, opened or clicked an email in a certain time period or not. And they, depending on the size of the database, they can fluctuate from 2 segments to 5 or 6. What we would do with a new brand that we're working with is send a campaign as they would do normally, which is generally the whole database, but split by our segments. Look at the activity by recipient report, and then start to say, well, actually, half your data is driving 85-90% of the order's revenue. The other half isn't doing anything. This is the data to allow to go to have a break, go fallow, bring it back in at peak. So those sort of elements will help overall engagement. It's more likely that you're going to get into the inbox. So just because you're sending an email doesn't mean you're actually hitting the inbox. And we can generally tell that when we send to older data, you start to see slightly higher spam complaint rates when they've got back into the inbox. Ensure that you've got add to cart tracking. So in the Shopify sphere, Magento, viewed product is clear. You've browsed that particular product. Started checkout is fired on the Shopify checkout started, but most websites will allow you to start to see your basket content as you're in between that viewed product and started checkout process. So make sure you've got the add to cart tracking enabled. Klaviyo have made that really easy recently with an update into their configuration. So that's well worth enabling. Generally, if you're seeing, say, £10,000 a month of revenue coming from basket abandonment, you'll see exactly the same coming from add to cart. So there's a sizable revenue uplift if you're not doing it. Ensure that customers receive flows as a priority over campaigns. Flow and automations are very much based on that user's last interaction with you as a business on your site. So they're the ones to prioritize over that mass broadcast send because they're much more likely to convert. If you do have a blacklisting problem, i.e. your deliverability is so poor that you're hitting, multiple spam traps because there's no engagement segmentation, it can take 6 to 8 weeks to recover from that position. So be very mindful as you go into peak, that you want to get that activity into the inbox. So sometimes you have to sort of say less is more. And finally, if your policies allow, activate the anonymous visitor tracking. So again, Klaviyo can start to capture that information about a site visitor, and then when an email address is then associated with that cookie, it can tie all that historical browsing data together, and that gives you a much better view of the customer experience versus just having an email address that's signed up but not having that history that goes with it. So those would be my 6 top tips to take into peak as we rapidly approach Black Friday. And I think that's me.
Thanks for that, Phill. If attendees want to ask a question if you can use the Zoom Q&A. Yeah. So Phill, are you seeing like have clients have they got everything ready already for Black Friday now, or is it like
It really depends on the brand. Some will have some will have detailed and very comprehensive plans. Others will wing it by the seat of their pants. If I'm perfectly honest, the majority that we're working with have a very clear structure. The challenge I think brands are seeing this year with Black Friday being so late in the November, Cyber Monday's going into December, and there's a lot of conversations going on about how does that dovetail Christmas into Black Friday. So most brands, I think, are starting to say, well, how can we position Christmas above Black Friday? So I think we'll see an intensive period starting in November for Black Friday, and it will pretty much stop stone dead rather than extend out past that usual period. But yeah, I think most brands are looking at deliverability. Klaviyo has made it much easier to look at your deliverability score, so it's not such a black box now. Brands are very much more mindful of that. They are really starting to understand, the brands we're working with understand what the value of each email address is. So how can you, by cohort. So actually, if you're not engaged with email, what can we do with that data in a different way? Because we're getting very low response rates. So they're using data to try and push that data out to other channels. So they're pulling it out for direct mail, for example. They're pushing it out to Facebook, Google for retargeting. So what I'm seeing certainly in the market is a move. Brands attempting to move away from being siloed experts in each channel to having someone trying to look after the customer across every channel, with experts deploying, but someone's having a central view of what the whole customer experience. Historically, brands have given your PPC SEO team a target to go and hit. You've given your email team a target to go and hit acquisition versus retention. But actually now brands are starting to think about what's the overall customer experience. So we're seeing lots more head of customer roles, being recruited for.
Yeah, and I suppose with that kind of seasonal peak, yeah, we've got some clients in America that are like they're underutilizing their kind of email list, especially for like product registrations,
Yeah.
and it kind of seems like a sort of hidden gold.
It's really interesting. So as you alluded to, I've been there, done that, seen it, got the t-shirt. Retention and email marketing is not sexy in the slightest. It never has been. It's a really tough area to recruit in because individuals want that social experience. So they want to be going off and doing TikTok and all those fun, exciting bits, which I don't understand to a certain extent. And I don't know, Phill, you probably heard it. Email's dying. Email's going to be dead in the next couple of years. Email still is that fundamental identifier in that digital space. I've got email addresses I've had since I was a teenager. Email's not going anywhere, but it's the forgotten stepchild to a certain extent until acquisition costs get high, and then suddenly retention becomes quite efficient again, and everyone wants to do more of it.
Yeah, and also you still need email for either Facebook or Google Ads customer match. So
Exactly.
it's and if anything, it's probably becoming more important given that given that Apple's trying to kill off cookies. Uh, so,
Yeah. Yeah, and look, I've always been a huge fan of zero first party data cookies. I think we'll see those third party cookies really die off in the next couple of years. But that zero party data is key for everything in my view. It's brands that want to do a personalized customer journey are going to need to be able to capture zero party data.
Cool. Okay, and if a brand needs or is not sure how good or bad their existing Klaviyo account is, can they either run your AI tool or can they run like a checklist on that?
Yeah, look, if anyone wants, more than happy. If anyone wants to contact me direct, I'll send them through our audit document, or we're happily to jump into their Klaviyo account under NDA and complete that customer journey review in effect for them. Off the back of that, they'll get some of the tips and tricks that we would look to activate first of all. Really, some of it it has to be said. Some of this is subjective. However, there are some quick wins that we'll find. To activate, and conversations around data capture, it becomes really key to that. I was on a call this morning with a brand that's using a third party to change their Shopify checkout opt-in status, and again, that customer experience isn't the greatest using that element. So again, we just have quite open, pragmatic conversations with brands and give them some advice.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Phill.
Thanks, Phill.
Okay, thanks.